Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, we are speaking in English oder sprechen wir Deutsch? Hare Krishna. Englisch?
Ja.
Dann brauche ich die Englische. Und ich habe nur die Deutsche hier. So, Hare Krishna. We are reading from chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 6. Karmendriyani samyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Please chant.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Yaste manasa smaran. Yaste manasa smaran. Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Karmendriyani samyamya. Karmendriyani samyamya.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Somebody else?
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Yaste manasa smaram.
Yaste manasa smaran.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Indriyarthan vimutatma.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Okay, word by word translation. And translation and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Karma-indriyani.
Karma-indriyani.
The five working sense organs.
The five working sense organs.
Samyamya.
Samyamya.
Controlling.
Controlling.
Yaha.
Yaha.
Anyone who.
Anyone who.
Aste.
Aste.
Remains.
Remains.
Manasa.
Manasa.
By the mind.
By the mind.
Smaran.
Smaran.
Thinking of.
Thinking of.
Indriyarthan.
Indriyarthan.
Sense objects.
Sense objects.
Vimudha.
Vimudha.
Foolish.
Foolish.
Atma.
Atma.
Soul.
Soul.
Mithya achara.
Mityacharasa.
Pretender.
Pretender.
Saha.
Saha.
He.
He.
Uchyate.
Uchyate.
Is called.
Is called.
Translation. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on the sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Please kindly responsibly repeat. One who restrains the senses of action,
One who restrains the senses of action,
but whose mind dwells on the sense objects,
but whose mind dwells on the sense objects,
certainly deludes himself
certainly deludes himself,
and is called a pretender.
and is called a pretender.
Purport. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation, while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value, because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Om Magyana Dimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshudun Militan Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadama Yandadati Svapadanti Kam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Brahmami Haripe Panchakalpa Tarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. And first I want to beg for your blessings that I can speak something to elevate the consciousness and to be an instrument of the Guru Parampara. So, I want to read the verse once again, so that we don't forget this. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. And when preparing on this verse, I found 3 main points that are discussed in the verse itself and in the purport, which is at first a discrepancy between the activities of the senses and the activities of the mind or the state of consciousness. Second is that hypocrisy is cheating. That is what Srila Prabhupada is mainly going in the purport. And also in the end of the purport he states, this is the third point, that hypocrisy does not have any value. There's no result of that. And actually the value of our spiritual practice is dependent on the consciousness that we have. And that is due to the fact that consciousness is the symptom of the soul. And because the body is made out of the material energy and is also depending on it. And we have also in the same chapter here the verse that the spiritual soul under the influence of false ego thinks himself the doer of all activities which in actuality are carried out by the 3 modes of material nature. And so that is not what Krishna wants from us. Also the result is not necessarily what he wants from us, because this is not fully dependent on us. Also in 2nd chapter in verse 47 he says that we are not the cause of the result that we have. So therefore what does he want from us? He wants our love, and this is depending on our consciousness. There was once, Srila Prabhupada was once asked by some book distributors, I think it was even German book distributors, that how can we please you the most? And they were anticipating that he would say, yeah, book distribution. But he said, surprisingly for them, he said, if you love Krishna. And this is the point, because you can do so many things. You can build big temples. You can distribute 100 books. And but if the consciousness is, or the attitude is not in a loving spirit or a serving spirit, then it could also be an offensive spirit, and this is not what Krishna wants. So that Krishna wants that we want to direct our consciousness on him. And this is stated various times in the Bhagavad Gita. We have it 2 times, even in the same literal expression, in 9:34. Anvana bhavanat bhakto, madhyajiman namaskuru, nami vaishasi yuktvaivam, advana matpadaya namaha. And similar in the 18th chapter, 1865. You know these verses. So, and Manmana means that Krishna wants us that we think of him always. And he also states in 6th chapter, the last verse, that the greatest yogi is the one who always thinks of him within himself. And he also states that in the 8th verse of the 12th chapter, that just direct your mind on me. In this section, this is the 8th verse, he gives a list what you should do, and the first one is you direct the mind on him. If you cannot do this, you have principles that you can follow. If you cannot do this, there are other things. But the topmost thing is that we always think of Krishna, and that is due to the fact that transmigration, the law of transmigration, works like this: that the last state of mind or consciousness that we have is the reason for the type of body that you take next. And our goal is that we take a spiritual body, or not to take a material body again, because this is suffering. And we might forget Krishna in the material world due to the illusionary energy. And it's nice also in the 12th chapter, Krishna does not only say that, okay, you should do this, and that's it, but he says, Mayapita mano buddhya yomat bhakta samebriya. Meaning that if you, so those people who direct their mind on me, they are very dear to me. So Krishna likes those. And that's very nice. And everything is actually dependent on our consciousness. Every activity, the quality of the activity that we do is dependent on the consciousness that we have. The chanting, when we cook in the kitchen, when we serve on the altar, same thing with the chanting, or on the altar. Are we aware that the deity or the holy name, that they are the Lord, that they are not different from the Lord, that Lord is present, that he reciprocates, and this is our consciousness. It depends on our consciousness. So this verse speaks about the discrepancy of the actions of the senses and the consciousness, and this is called hypocrisy, to pretend, to tun als ob. And but this does not have any value. Srila Prabhupada states that very clearly. Last sentence: such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of magic meditation has no value whatsoever. And this is very interesting because when we practice something, then we want to have a result, spiritually or materially, but to pretend is, we don't have a result. And and Prabhupada states clearly that such people are called cheaters. Cheaters in 2 senses, because in one sense cheating others, because if one poses himself as a spiritual master or somebody who guides others, and he is misleading them because he does not have realization, or his mind is so impure that he guides them into the impurity, and this will not be sure. This will not give the result. And Srila Prabhupada especially goes also in the previous verse and the verse prior to that Thakur spoke about 2 days ago. Prabhupada especially speaks about those who take sannyas, but they are actually just trying to earn their livelihood with that, and he condemns that, and that's correct, like this. But so this is on the one hand cheating others. I mean, this is clear. But another big point is that we also cheat ourselves, and this is the verse says itself. The verse states that this person who dwells on the sense objects, but he restrains the senses of action, this person deludes himself. But why does he delude himself? You could think. But the thing is, why he deludes himself, that is stated in the next, also in the next verse in the purport, because the true self-interest is to attain Krishna. That is what we want to. This is what we want to achieve, and this is what everybody wants to achieve, even though he does not know it, because it is our constitutional position to be in the Lord's association, to serve Him in love, because that is our nature actually, to serve the Lord in love. And that is what we are looking for. And if one misuses the literature, knowingly or unknowingly, this is cheating himself. Yeah. And also because there's no result to this practice. Therefore, one should be honest about one's own position, and one should work where one is. That's a big point. And in the previous verse, 3.5, Krishna states very interestingly, it's a very nice verse, that everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. This is very interesting, because our nature is to be always active. That is all desires and is always active. We cannot be inactive, so that's the point. We cannot just restrain the senses and pretend to be renounced or not doing the activities, especially if we are impure, and this is then the consciousness is impure. If we are impure, means the consciousness there are impurities, and yeah, this is manifested also in the karma that we have now. The body is the manifested karma from previous lifetimes. We cultivated desires, we acted in a certain way, and the reaction is that we have now this body with a certain type of karma, good or bad. Maybe we are intelligent, maybe we are oftentimes sick, maybe we are cheated very often, or we have very loving relationships. That is all that our karma. And also we have a psychophysical nature that pertains to the mind, mind, intelligence, and the ego, and also the body consisting of the five gross elements. And this nature is there, and we cannot act against it. We can act against it, but we are forced to act under the spell of the material modes, and this is unavoidable. We cannot avoid it. In 18th chapter, verse 40, Krishna states that nobody in this material world is not under the influence. So meaning everybody is under the influence of these modes of material nature. We cannot. We can get free of that by surrendering unto Him. He says in 7th chapter, verse 14, those who surrender unto me, they can easily cross beyond the modes of material nature. But this surrender is a process. And therefore we practice Vaidhi Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, that is the school for our consciousness. Maybe I will speak a little bit more about this. And interestingly, in addition, Krishna says also in verse 33 of this chapter that I'm not sure about the English word, but repression. What can repression accomplish? Because even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? And this is a very good point, especially also for ourselves. We can reflect. For example, when we are there's one example when we eat a lot of prasadam. There are two ways to look at it. We can just eat as much like fried things and sweet things and say, oh, this is transcendental. We will become purified. Certainly we will become purified. That's true. But the correct attitude would be more like this: that okay, I'm overeating and I know it. I'm honest with myself. But I need it, because otherwise my mind would be constantly thinking about the sense objects. But if I'm honest about it, then I also can honestly pray to the Lord and say, okay, I have this difficulty, I am conditioned by the modes, one can then work where he is. If one pretends to be renounced and then secretly eats, for example, there's no point, especially if one deludes himself, because then it's very difficult to make advancement if one is not honest with oneself. And therefore, very important point is introspective. In German you call it also Innenschau, to look into yourself, to have an internal vision. Innenschau? Innenschau, meaning like looking inside, to look what's going on internally. So, and then we can reflect, why are we acting as we are doing, and where is my actual position? And these are very existential questions, and we have to think about it in order to act in the way that is most beneficial for our spiritual path. And that's the point that I want to make in this lecture, which is also what Srila Prabhupada says, that by pretension, or pretense, I think the English word is, that there won't be result. That if one is honest with oneself and works where he is, then one can make advancement. And that he will also state in the next verse. Krishna will state this in the next verse. We can reflect about, for example, if one chooses a certain ashram, for example, brahmachari ashram, then am I choosing this ashram because everybody is saying this is the best, and if I'm brahmachari for the whole life, then I will go back to Godhead, or am I doing this because I feel this is right, I can practice here nicely, I can meditate upon the Lord, I can focus myself, I'm not distracted. It could be also the other way. This would be honest, to think like this. But dishonest would be if I think, okay, I'm now in the brahmachari ashram, but one is still thinking about the opposite sex the whole time, but pretending to be like, oh, I'm so renounced, I'm chanting early in the morning or whatever what brahmacharis do. I mean, some certain type of lifestyle one follows, but it's very difficult. And it would be more easy to practice spiritual life and to accelerate in spiritual life if one would be in the Grihastha ashram, for example. For this one needs guidance, for this one needs also to look closely inside, certainly, to see what is one's position. And yeah, the brahmachari ashram certainly is good to try for some time, but not to keep to something, to upadhi, which is a designation, to think, I have to be this, I have to be the greatest kirtani, or best lecture giver, and then when something goes wrong, then, oh my god, I failed, I'm a failure. But this is nonsense. These are upadhis, and they are temporary, of course. Therefore, reflection is very important. Otherwise, we are putting on a mask. And then also another big point is that it's very difficult to keep relationships or to have relationships, because if you try to cultivate relationships or live relationships, and this is dealing with the mask, so you have the person and the person is dealing with the mask here, but I myself, I'm situated somewhere else where this interaction is taking place, then I myself will not feel fulfilled, I feel empty, I will feel empty, and I will not experience the high taste Paranitrishtwani Vatati. So, and then we are pleasure seeking, because our true nature is to be happy. So therefore we will then look out for somewhere else to have some pleasure. And this most likely will be inferior pleasure. And if we go further into this point, then relationships, then also how can we have a relationship with the Lord if we are not honest with ourselves, if we cannot be authentic. That's the thing. Because when we go to the Lord in front of Nising Halif and we pray something, and I experienced this in the beginning, I went to the Lord and I had a certain prayer that I always said, maybe it was like for pure devotional service or something like this, or yeah. And I prayed it so often that even nowadays, when I go in the front of the Lord and I'm unconscious, at least a little, then I immediately this same expression comes over my lips, but my consciousness is not there. I don't. I cultivated this mechanically, but the consciousness is not there. So this is not authentic. I mean, it's better than nothing. This is. It's still good, it will still have an effect, but if the consciousness is behind that and it is an authentic prayer, then the Lord will be much more pleased, and He will also reciprocate with that. That's the big point. and because we are aware of our position and where we need to work, and then we can't go to the Lord, oh Lord, I have difficulties here, I need to work on this, can you please help me? But if we are, I can explain, give an example from my case. Now I'm not going in the marathon, especially because I have health issues in the joints, so I cannot go into the cold too much or stand too long or do physical activity. So this is the situation. So, but still I could think, oh no, Sankirtan is the best thing, and I have to distribute 100 books at least every day. And because that's the mood and this is the best, and I know this is the best, but in my situation it's not the best. I have to be honest to myself to see where I am, and now I have to deal with my health. And this is one could say, oh, this is, you're dealing with the body, and this might be Maya, but this is the best devotional service that I can now do in order to become fit and eligible for future devotional service and for serving the spiritual master in the future effectively and nicely. That's the thing, we have to be honest about that. That's why authenticity is very important. The definition of authenticity is ingenuity, unadulteratedness. I looked it up in German, so therefore I wrote it down here. I want to give you the English equivalent. Glaubwürdigkeit. Credibility. What Glaubwürdigkeit, credibility, trustworthiness, yeah. And also a psychological definition is to act in keeping with one's values and notions or convictions and emotions. And so the internal state of consciousness is also the external doing, so there's not the mask. And this leads to an honest dealing with oneself also. And this guarantees faster progress because you can work at the right spots, the right construction sites. As I just explained with my own example, I have to deal now. My construction site is the health issue, and not to distribute now 100 books in the marathon. Because if I would go into this, then maybe I would burn out bodily and mentally in such a way that I would not be able to, or not being motivated to carry out devotional service in the future. So therefore we have to be honest and authentic, and this gives us the ability to pray honestly, and this leads to a true relationship with the Lord. If we are honest with ourselves, then we can be honest in relationships, especially also with the Lord. And Krishna says a very nice thing in 4th chapter, 11th verse, meaning, in the way that one approaches the Lord, he will reciprocate. This means that if we approach the Lord in a certain mood or a certain attitude or the consciousness, then he will reciprocate in this way. This is the point, and this is very nice, because if we become more honest with ourselves, we will advance faster, and we can also experience the relationship with the Lord, because and that is what we want to do. It's the supreme goal to attain this supreme loving relationship in pure devotional service. And another thing, I listened to one lecture of Srila Prabhupada for this verse, and he said that it is good to follow one's footsteps of an acharya, but to pretend and not to imitate, this is very dangerous. And Krishna also says this in 18th chapter, that this is verse 47, it is better to fulfill one's own duty, even though it's imperfectly executed. It's nature. Therefore, quality of consciousness is very important. We should be careful about this, and we can be authentic. And this is what this verse means, what my thoughts are to this. If somebody has an addition, a question, or maybe some story also, then I would be happy.
No, just that. Okay, I start with the first question. I have 2 questions. So, Hare Krishna, thank you very much for the wonderful class. I have 2 questions. So one is, what about, how can we go more into becoming more authentic? So you mentioned authenticity, you gave the definition, and I mentioned authentic prayers, and what would you suggest to as a process to go for more authenticity?
That's a process, as you just said, so it will not be immediately the case. But there are 2 things that come to my mind just now. First one is you can pray to the Lord. If you feel completely helpless, or even if you don't, you can always pray to the Lord, because the Lord is our friend and He helps us. And second thing is introspection. You reflect and you try to observe the consciousness and see what is going on there. You can make a trace. You can trace back what is going on actually. You can use just a simple example: eating prasadam. If you just between the meals, for example, and this is maybe not your lifestyle, and you take some prasadam or you eat something, then you can reflect, why I'm taking this now. Is it because I need, or is there greed? And if there is some special need, even though I'm not hungry, then why is it? Why am I feeling hungry? Maybe it's connected to some emotions. And if you start to observe the consciousness, and you can make connections, you can see patterns also. You can speak also about enviousness, for example. I mean, these are things that we want to overcome, and we don't want to repress them, but to see and acknowledge that they are there. And if we know who the enemy is of the mind, then we can deal with them very nicely. And this is a process, you can learn it. And for example, enviousness might not be immediately seen, or criticism, but sometimes it comes up into the consciousness that you just criticize the devotee, or you think, oh, it would have been better that I leave the kirtan. And then you can, without judging, you can just see, okay, where is this coming from? Why do I feel like this? And there may be many reasons for that. Maybe there's low self-esteem even in yourself, and you think you have to be above everybody else, otherwise you won't be acknowledged. This thing is very, very deep. Many reasons can be there, but you can try to see this and observe this, and then you can speak with devotees, try to overcome this. You should pray to the Lord that He helps you to overcome these things. But you can see this, and this is introspection is a process. Maybe was it okay?
Very, very good.
You had a second question?
First Sanjay. Yeah, you go. Sure. Yeah.
What do you think about engagement in spiritual activities? Because it says even if you do them unconsciously, there is result. So if you simply do material activities which are against your nature, then nothing good comes out. But if you do spiritual activities, like you said yourself, if you pray unconsciously or unconsciously, either way there will be something.
Yeah.
So, what is your realization about this? Should we how conscious, how much should we expect from ourselves to be conscious while chanting Hare Krishna, or
the most?
So because it may be difficult when they think that I'm doing this, but I forgot why, but still I'm doing it.
Authentic would be if you just acknowledge where you are. If you cannot chant attentively, should be okay, but you are working on it, and that's the honesty, and that is what the Lord appreciates also. The other point that you mentioned is engaging in spiritual activities, even though unconsciously. That is Agyata Sukriti, meaning pious activity, pious merit, spiritual merit, that is being acquired unconsciously. And we are also on our path where we acquire Sukriti, because we are not fully conscious of what we are doing until we are completely pure. But maybe we know a little more. So it is always it's the best to engage in spiritual activities, and that is what actually Krishna will tell you in the next verse, which will be discussed tomorrow, that it is by far better to just see what is one's position, and in this position, under guidance, you work and you offer your results to the Lord, and gradually you will become purified. And it is also our process. Our process is Vaidhi Bhakti. We follow rules and regulations, and this is like a school where we are taught, where our consciousness is taught love of Godhead. And love of Godhead is the secret in understanding the Lord. Did I answer your question, or is it some gap?
I took from how to say? Yeah, from agyata to gyata. And be conscious. Oh, okay, it will come.
Yeah. That's what we're doing here. We are getting blessings here.
Yes.
And yeah.
I have a further question on part of the purport of Srila Prabhupada. If you can comment on the second to last sentence.
Second to last.
His knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Can you comment on, I cannot really grasp fully, I feel, how is happening these effects of a sinful man's knowledge that are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord? Maybe if you have an example, or if you can have a thought, if you have a thought on that.
There's no potency behind, because the mind is always impure. That's actually Prabhupada actually gives the answer in the last sentence to your question. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. His consciousness is impure. Therefore, no potency can come through. We want to be agents of the Lord. And the thing is that our consciousness must be eligible for this, must be qualified, and this happens, of course, after it's purified, and we are receptive for the mercy, and we are also able and willing to give that and to share that. Then we are empowered, and then our knowledge that we give when we speak or whatever we do, that has the potency that impacts on the individual. But of a person who is just pretending, even though he may speak something from Bhagavad Gita, there's the Shakti is not there. He's not empowered. That's the point. Empowerment. Yeah. And empowerment we can get when the consciousness is aligned properly. Is that okay?
Yes. Very nice.
Cool.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. Amazing lecture and very interesting topic. So my question is, a lot of devotees who are beginners, they might introspect and figure out what's lacking or where am I going on and all, and they might get various advice from senior devotees and all, but internally, no matter how much hard they try, they just keep on failing. Okay, they just make no progress for a longer time. So in such situations, just contemplating and keep trying is the only way. Staying in association of devotees and just contemplating that yes, this is something that I want to change for myself, and assuring ourselves that it will happen eventually, because now my association has changed, my daily habits have changed. And this I'm talking especially with beginner devotees. What do you think? What should be the attitude at those times?
How do you define failing?
Failure in the sense, let's say you took case of prasadam, but then there might be chance that someone might feel the urge, I just want to have this favorite burger of mine, or I just want to have that favorite pizza of mine, and he might be tempted to go out and eat it at some point, although he knows.
It's fine.
Yeah.
When he offers it to the Lord, then it's fine, and that's the progress. Then it's not failure.
Okay.
Bhakti Prabhupada Maharaj, when he when I learned Bhakti Shastri from him, he told me that you have a desire to eat pizza, and then you make a pizza according to your likes, and then you offer it to the Lord, you eat it, and you become purified of the desire to eat pizza. That's how it works.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes it might happen that we just want to eat something that's not easily available, or we don't have the, the energy to cook it or to do something, and we might say, oh, let me just go and grab something outside. Obviously something that falls into our restrictions, like no onion, garlic and all, even though we know that it might be contaminated.
So there's extra endeavor to fulfill your desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are not on the platform, but it's not fully pure, certainly. But that's where you are, and you can work with that. And you shouldn't criticize yourself for this.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. If a devotee falls in such a situation, and he does, let's say, eat something that is not offered, okay, but still he is on the path, and he's trying, and he assures that, next time, maybe he'll make better efforts to improve.
As long as you're honest about it, and you pray to the Lord, you think of the Lord, then you can make advancement. If you forget the Lord, then it's the worst. But if due to your nature or your conditioning, you might even break principles, you still pray to the Lord. Because all of us, we are conditioned, and maybe some of us are conditioned in a way that we break the principles, some others maybe are not, and they just break minor principles. But we depend on the Lord always. So therefore, you can intensify your chanting and prayer. Prayer is very potent. Prayers are result-oriented, and prayers have an amazing effect. And if you pray sincerely and intensely to the Lord, then he will help you. And therefore, authenticity is very important, because if you are not honest, then he cannot help you. Because if you pray, give one example. You pray, you want to become free of the desire to eat bread from the bakery. And then, but you do. I mean, this is not such a big thing. But so you're doing this, and you actually have the desire to eat it, especially this bread. You want to eat it, but actually you shouldn't do it. But you want to continue, and you pray to the Lord, please purify me from the desire. But actually you want to. You still want to eat it. So if the desire is not sincere, then the Lord cannot help you. Because that's the thing. The Lord fulfills our desires. But the thing is, with our chanting, and that's why it's the Yoga Dharma. With the chanting, our consciousness becomes purified. If we are sincere in our chanting, then all of the desires will become purified, and it will not be so difficult to follow principles. But if you break the principles and you are attached to, meaning there's the desire to break them, then it might also be difficult to sincerely pray. But if that's the potency of being honest. If you are honest with such a weakness, then you are humble, and you can approach the Lord in such a humble way. And this is the process of knowledge. That is what Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, in the 13th chapter. It starts with humbleness. If you are humble, you can approach the Lord. If somebody is puffed up and thinking, oh, I'm using the Lord, I ask him to fulfill me like this, and then I can enjoy in this way, then it won't work. Or maybe Krishna fulfills all of the desires, but the end result that we aspire for, which is pure love for God, this we won't attain. Yeah. Is it okay?
Thank you. Thanks.
Is there some comments and question maybe? Okay, then we adjourn this meeting. Kantarat, Srimad-Bhagavatam Gita, Ki! All glories to the Same devotees.